You heard Rasheeda's truth. You watched her stand tall, cry hard, and rebuild from the ashes. But what about Kirk? For years, he's been cast as the villain, cheater, manipulator, cold-hearted. But behind the headlines, behind the edits and the memes is a man who lived that same chaos, faced his own demons, and nearly walked away from everything, including her. For the first time ever, at Frost 117 is pulling back the curtain. No camera crew. No producers. Just his voice. And what he says will shock you. Because maybe, just maybe, the truth isn't as black and white as the internet made it seem. Maybe he wasn't proud of what he did, but maybe he also didn't know how to be the man Rasheeda needed, till it was almost too late. This isn't an apology tour. This is raw. This is real. This is the side we were never supposed to hear. Buckle up. Kirk speaks out. Hashtag Frost Unfiltered. Truth behind the drama. Hashtag LHHATL. Hashtag Marriage Unmasked at Frost 117. At Rasheeda, at VH1, the hardest part of all of this. Knowing I became the man I swore I'd never be. I didn't just hurt Rasheeda, I broke something in myself too. And for a long time, I didn't know how to say that out loud. I wore pride like armor. I made excuses. I laughed off the pain. But when the lights went out, when the cameras were gone, I was left with silence, and it was loud as hell. I remember the first night I slept on the couch after everything came out. The show had just aired the cheating episode, and the internet was eating me alive. Memes, hashtags, even people I knew were reposting the drama like it wasn't my real life. And I sat there, staring at the ceiling, thinking, what the hell did I just do? At Rasheeda didn't say much that night. Her silence was worse than yelling. She didn't slam doors or throw plates. She just looked at me like I was a stranger. That was the moment I realized the damage wasn't just emotional. It was spiritual. I had cracked the foundation of everything we built. For what? A moment of selfishness? Ego? Weakness? People ask me all the time, did you regret it? And the truth. Regret came slow. At first, I was defensive. She works. Too much. She wasn't there for me emotionally. We grew apart. All the classic lines, but deep down, I knew better. Those were surface excuses trying to cover a deeper rot. I'd been unhappy with myself, not with her. I didn't know how to ask for help without looking weak. And instead of dealing with my wounds, I wounded her. The producers wanted to film our first conversation after the scandal. I told them no, not because I wanted to protect my image, but because I knew I wasn't ready to be honest. Not with the cameras, not even with her. It took time, and therapy. Yeah, I said therapy. Something I used to clown my boys about. But sitting on that couch across from a stranger with a notepad, finally admitted it. I don't think I know how to be a good man. That hit me hard because I wanted to be. I thought I was. Providing, working, grinding, trying to give. Rasheeda and the kids the best life possible. But somewhere along the way, I started confusing money with presents. I was giving them everything but me. I grew up around men who taught me to shut down instead of open up. Handle your business. Don't let no woman control you. She nags, find someone who won't. Toxic mantras I swallowed like gospel. And I brought that into my marriage thinking I was doing what I was taught. But tradition, without evolution, is a prison. And I was locked up emotionally. I used to think love was about possession. Now I realize it's about partnership. I used to think forgiveness was weakness. Now I know it's the hardest. Strongest thing you can offer someone, especially yourself. There was a moment I almost left. Not because I didn't love her, but because I thought I had done too much damage to fix. I looked her in the eyes and said, if it's better for your peace, I'll walk away. And I meant it. I didn't want to be the shadow in her sunshine. But she looked back at me with tears, not anger, and said, I don't want you to leave. I want you to change. Sentence, it split me open. 'Cause for the first time I saw that she still had hope in me, even when I had lost it in myself. So I stayed. Not as a husband at first, but as a man trying to learn himself again. I started journaling. Yeah, laugh if you want. But those pages became my therapy when I couldn't speak. I wrote letters I never sent. I wrote apologies I couldn't voice. I wrote fears I didn't even know I had. And slowly I began to see the pattern, the way I ran when things got hard. The way I made her my emotional punching bag. The way I hid behind work instead of facing home. We didn't magically fix everything. There were nights she cried in the bathroom and locked the door. Nights I sat in the car after work because I didn't know how to face the weight in our house. But we kept showing up, kept choosing each other. Even when it wasn't pretty. I know the internet still clowns me. I know there are folks who'll never see me as more than the guy who cheated on Rasheeda. And I get it. I earned that criticism. But I also know who I'm becoming now, and that version of me. He's someone I respect. This is just part 1. There's more to say, more truth to tell. But if you take one thing from this, let it be this. Real men mess up. Real men break hearts. But real men can heal too if they're willing to put in the work. Hashtag Kirk speaks out. Hashtag part 1. Hashtag real men heal. Hashtag marriage after mistakes. Hashtag truth unfiltered. Hashtag love and redemption. Hashtag Frost 117. Hashtag LHHATL hashtag. L hashtag from broken to better. At Frost 117, at Rasheeda, at VH1, there's single quotes S. A strange kind of fame that comes with being the villain. At first, I hated it how people would whisper when I walked into a restaurant. The judgment in their eyes like they already knew everything about me. But eventually, it becomes like background noise. You get used to it. The tweets, the think pieces, the hashtags like hashtag trash husband and hashtag Kirk, AINT it. I became a meme literally. There was one going around where my face was photoshopped onto a garbage can. I laughed at it publicly. But it stung. What people didn't see was me driving to my mom's house late one night, parking outside and just crying. I didn't even go inside. I just needed to be near something familiar, something that reminded me of who I was before I lost myself in all of this. I sat in that car until the sun came up, asking myself one question over and over. How did I get here? Because when I met at Rasheeda, I was hungry, focused, a dreamer who believed in building something real. And she was that something real. She wasn't just beautiful, she was sharp, driven, loyal. She had my back in rooms where no one else even saw me. And now, it's the reason her name was being dragged through the mud right alongside mine. Let's talk about the kids. Because they weren't just watching, they were absorbing it all. You know how hard it is to look your son in the eyes when he's old enough to understand what cheating means? When he starts asking, why are people saying bad stuff about you, Dad? That crushed me. Because I realized I hadn't just betrayed my wife, I had failed as a father. We sat them down one night. No cameras, no producers, just us and truth. I said, listen, Daddy made a mistake, a big one, and I hurt Mommy, but I'm trying to make it right. And that starts with being honest. They didn't say much at first, just nodded. But later, my oldest pulled me aside and said, don't mess up again, okay? That hit different. I knew I had to rebuild not just my marriage, but my credibility as a man. That meant doing the work privately before I could show up publicly. I started reading books on emotional intelligence, went back to therapy, joined a men's group that met every other week. We talked about accountability, healing, growth. Some of those sessions got heavy. Grown men crying, admitting how we never learned how to love without control. It opened my eyes, and here's the truth that most people won't say out loud. A lot of us men don't cheat because we don't love our wives. We cheat because we don't love ourselves enough to face our own insecurities. I was insecure, scared of not being enough, scared of aging, scared of becoming irrelevant. And instead of confronting that, I looked for validation in attention. But attention isn't love, it's noise. And the minute it fades, you're emptier than before. I wish I could say the healing was linear. It wasn't. There were setbacks. Fights that reopened old wounds. Days where Rasheeda looked at me and said, "I don't trust you today." And I had to take that. Not defend, not deflect, just sit with it. Because rebuilding trust means earning it daily. It's not a one-time grand gesture. It's the small things. Answering the phone on the first ring. Being transparent with my location. Checking in. Staying present. We started taking walks together. At first, they were quiet. Just side by side, barely speaking. But over time, the conversations came. Real ones. Not just about us, but about who we were outside the marriage. What we lost in the chaos of being a public couple. What we missed about our old selves. Those walks became sacred, a space where we could just be, no roles, no scripts. And then there were moments of light. Like the time she laughed at one of my old jokes again, or the night she fell asleep on my shoulder without tension in her body. Little things that told me, we're not there yet, but we're going somewhere. To the people still commenting, she should have left. I hear you. I understand. But here's the thing. Healing doesn't always look like walking away. Sometimes healing is choosing to stay and do the work. Not because it's easier, but because there's something still worth fighting for. And at Rasheeda, she's a fighter. Stronger than anyone knows. She gave me the space to grow, even when she had every right to shut the door. We started writing letters to each other, one per week. No editing, no reading aloud, just placing them on the dresser and walking away. Some of those letters broke me, others healed me. And some, well, they reminded me why I fell in love with her in the first place. This journey ain't over. But part 2. This was the part where I stopped running. Where I looked in the mirror and finally told the truth. I hurt the woman I love. And I don't deserve a second chance. I'm working to earn it. Hashtag Kirk speaks out. Hashtag part 2. Hashtag father first. Hashtag truth uncut. Hashtag healing. As Amen. Hashtag emotional maturity. Hashtag black men do therapy. Hashtag growth in silence. Hashtag from villain to real man. Hashtag LHHATL. Hashtag Kirk. And RASHEEDA. Hashtag rebuilding trust. At Frost117, at Rasheeda, at VH1 the day. I saw my wife smile without pain behind her eyes, felt like I had been given oxygen for the first time in years. That moment came during something simple as cleaning out the garage. We were sweating, tossing out old boxes, and she found one with photos from our first vacation to Jamaica. She laughed, genuinely, and I stood there stunned. Because in that laugh, I saw the woman I hadn't protected well enough. And I promised myself I'd never take that sound for granted again. That night, I sat up while she slept and wrote down everything I could remember about our first year together. Not the trips or the shows, just the little things. How she used to drink ginger tea before bed. How she hummed 702 songs while folding laundry. How she always ironed my clothes, even if she was mad at me. I realized how many of those memories I had let fade because I'd been too caught up chasing something outside of us. Let me be clear. I'm not painting myself as a hero here. I'm not. I was reckless. I was selfish. I thought because I was providing, I was allowed certain passes. But love doesn't keep score like that. You can't outturn betrayal. You can't buy peace after you've broken someone's trust. All the jewelry, all the designer bags, all the apologies in the world won't undo that moment she sat on the bathroom floor crying while I was out doing who-knows-what. The internet always asks, why did Rasheeda stay? And I think that's the wrong question. The better one is, why did I think I could keep living like she wouldn't leave? Because I got comfortable. Too comfortable. I mistook her loyalty for weakness, but real loyalty. It's the strongest thing in the world. She stayed not because she didn't have options, but because she still saw the man I could be. She was giving me a chance to meet that version of myself again. And I worked. I humbled myself. I started over. One of the first things I did was give her access to everything's phones, passwords, accounts. Transparency became my default. If she asked, I answered. No hesitation. Not because I was scared of her, but because I finally respected her enough to put her peace above my pride. We also put boundaries in place. I stopped going to late-night studio sessions unless it was absolutely necessary. Stopped entertaining. Dims, I made my circles smaller. There's a difference between friends and people who like having you around because of who you are publicly. I cut off anyone who didn't value my marriage. If you can't respect my wife, you can't stand next. To me. At Rasheeda, and I started couples therapy again, but this time with a different approach. We weren't just talking about what went wrong. We were building new communication tools. One exercise that changed everything was something called mirror talk. Once a week, we'd stand in front of a mirror and say one thing we admired about each other and one thing that hurt us recently. No yelling, no defensiveness. Just truth. One week she said, I admire that you're trying to be more present with the kids, but I still feel like you don't hear me when I'm overwhelmed. That stung because I thought I was being present. But presence isn't just physical. It's emotional. It's noticing when she's quieter than usual. It's asking, do you need help? Before she has to ask. I had to learn to speak her love language again. And not just the surface stuff, gifts and dates, but the deeper parts, being consistent. Showing up when it's inconvenient. Supporting her dreams the way she supported mine for decades. People say forgiveness is for the forgiver, but I think it's also a gift the forgiven must cherish. Every time she chose to stay, she was putting faith in the possibility of a better us. I knew I couldn't waste that. We started documenting our progress, not for the show, not for social media, but for ourselves. Journals, voice notes, even video diaries we kept private. On one of them, I recorded myself at 3 a.m. after a fight saying, if you're watching this later, I want you to know I'm not giving up. I know I've hurt you, but I see you now. I really see you. She watched that video months later and just hugged me. No words. Just that hug. And I knew we were on the path. Finally. I'll end this part with a message to anyone going through something similar. Don't wait until you lose everything to realize what matters. Be honest now. Show up now. Do the work now. Kirk speaks out. Part 3. Marriages work. Healing is messy. Real love is loud. Protect her peace. Do better. Be better. From broken to better. Black love matters. Growth journey at Frost117. At Rasheeda at VH1. Healing takes time, and not just for the person who was hurt, but also for the one who did the hurting. People forget that shame is a quiet monster. It doesn't scream. It whispers in the back of your mind when you're alone. You don't deserve this second chance. She's only staying out of pity. You'll mess it up again. I've battled those thoughts every single day. I remember one afternoon, in the studio, just me and the sound engineer. I was laying down a verse, trying to focus, but the words just weren't coming. I stepped out for some air, sat on the curb, and pulled out my phone to scroll. The first comment I saw under a photo of at Rasheeda and me said, "Why is she still with him? He's garbage." I stared at it for a long time. Not because I hadn't seen worse, but because I believed it. I texted her right then. Just said, "I'm sorry." Again. She didn't reply immediately, but when she did, she wrote, "I see your work. That's what matters now." That moment was a turning point for me. I realized I couldn't fight the internet. I couldn't erase what I did, but I could show up for my wife every day in ways no headline could capture. I could be the man she deserved, not just when the cameras were rolling. but in the quiet, invisible moments that no one else would ever see. We started planning dates again. Not fancy ones. One of the biggest turning points came unexpectedly at a panel we were invited to speak on about love, loyalty, and public relationships. We almost didn't go, honestly. I didn't want to. I was scared that people would look at Rasheeda and wonder why she was still next to me. But she said something that stuck. Sometimes showing up is the healing. So we went. It was hosted at a small cultural center. Nothing flashy. About 200 people, mostly couples, some married, some just dating people of all ages. All races. Sitting in folding chairs, waiting to hear from two people who'd been through it publicly. When we walked in, people clapped. Not everyone. But enough that I felt like maybe, just maybe, we weren't being booed off the stage. We sat on that panel, microphones in hand, and talked about betrayal, about love, about choosing to stay. Rasheeda didn't sugarcoat anything. She said it wasn't just about him cheating. It was about the lies, the disrespect, the inconsistency. The moment I realized I had to either leave or redefine what I wanted this marriage to be. Then they handed me the mic. I looked out at the audience, cleared my throat, and said, I messed up. I betrayed the trust of the one person who believed in me when no one else did. And every day since, I've been working to become a man worthy of that belief again. Silence. Then someone in the front row nodded, and then another. And slowly, people started clapping, not for the mistake, but maybe for the honesty. After the panel, this older couple came up to us. The man said, I cheated 15 years ago. She stayed, and we've been rebuilding ever since. His wife added, we don't tell people that part, but hearing you two made us feel less alone. That stuck with me because as much as the internet dragged us, we weren't alone. We were just public. And what I learned that day is this: shame dies in sunlight. When you tell your story, it can't control you anymore. But even after moments like that, the work didn't stop. If anything, it got harder. Because growth reveals more layers. You think you've healed something, and then something smaller. Tone of voice, a delay in a text reply rigors an old wound. We had to keep doing the work. Therapy, prayer, patience, and most of all, choosing each other daily. Not out of obligation, but out of intention. One night, I came home late from a meeting. Nothing shady, just business. But I hadn't texted. I walked in, and Rasheeda was quiet, not mad, just distant. That silence used to make me defensive. You always assume the worst, I'd say. But now, I sat down next to her and said, you have every right to feel whatever you're feeling. I should have called, that's on me. She looked at me and said, thank you. That was it. No yelling, no tears. Just mutual respect. I've learned that love isn't loud. It's not big declarations on social media. It's not grand gestures. It's tiny choices. It's washing the dishes without being asked. It's saying, I was wrong before being cornered. It's bringing her favorite snacks home because you remembered she had a hard day. It's knowing her love language and speaking it fluently. I still mess up, still fall short, but now I recover quicker. I take responsibility faster. And I try to never let pride speak louder than love. We're in a different place now. Not perfect, but real. Still have hard conversations. Still trigger each other sometimes. But now we have tools. Now we have boundaries. Now we have a foundation that's not based on appearances, but on truth. To anyone watching this and asking, is it worth it? Only you can answer that. But I'll say this. Sometimes the hardest roads lead to the strongest connections. And sometimes staying isn't weakness. It's strength beyond words. Kirk speaks out. Hashtag part 5. Hashtag marriage work. Hashtag staying strong. Hashtag rebuilding love. Hashtag relationship. Goals unfiltered. Hashtag honest love. Hashtag love. In real life. Hashtag black love heals. Hashtag truth before pride at Frost117 at Rasheeda at VH1. Now that we've stepped out of the storm, people often ask us, what's next? And I tell them it's not about the next big milestone, it's about the next right choice. Every day, we're making small decisions that strengthen the foundation we almost lost. The glitz and drama of TV is one thing, but this quiet rebuilding, that's the real story. I remember the first time we took a vacation after everything blew up. No cameras, just us. We were in Turks and Caicos, and for the first time in years, we didn't feel watched. One night, we sat on the beach. Rasheeda leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, "You still see me?" Said clearer than ever. And that's what this journey has taught me: clarity. I used to think love was about ownership, about control, about winning. But love is freedom. It's grace. It's growth. Rasheeda gave me the room to become who I was meant to be. And now it's my job to honor that every single day. We've started mentoring couples quietly. No Instagram lives, no photo ops. Just heart-to-hearts with people going through it. And we tell them the truth. Healing isn't linear. Some days you'll want to run. Some days you'll want to stay. What matters is that you both want it badly enough to fight for it with honesty, with humility, and with love. There were moments I wanted to give up. Moments she did too. But we kept choosing each other. Not blindly, but with our eyes wide open. We knew the cost, and we decided the reward was worth it. To the men watching this, I'll say this: don't wait until she's halfway out the door to become the man you promised you'd be. Start now, apologize now, change now. Not because she's perfect, but because she deserves the version of you that loves fully, without pride, without ego. To the women, thank you for your strength, for your forgiveness, for your truth. You carry more than we often acknowledge. Okay. And if you're tired, if you're healing, if you're in a space of rebuilding, know that you are not alone. Rasheeda is more than a reality star. She's a survivor, a mother, a CEO, a queen. And I thank God every day that she chose to stay. Not because I deserved it, but because she saw who I could become. And now my mission is to never make her question that decision again. Love doesn't erase the past, but it can rewrite the future. And that's what we're doing. One day, when our kids are older, they'll watch this story unfold. And I hope they don't just see scandal. I hope they see strength. I hope they see redemption. I hope they see that even broken things can become beautiful again. This is our story. Unedited, unfiltered, unapologetically true. Hashtag Kirk speaks out. Hashtag final chapter. Hashtag healing out loud. Hashtag love after pain. Hashtag marriage heals. Hashtag Black Love Matters. Hashtag Black Love Matters. Hashtag grace and growth. Hashtag rebuilding stronger. Hashtag no more masks at Frost 117 at Rasheeda at VH1.